There was a cucumber in the lost property office. It was found near the ticket barrier at the station. No one came in to say it was theirs. The cucumber sat on the shelf and started to go soft, but still no one came. And then it started to flatten out and go mushy. The skin stayed more or less the same, a bit wrinkly, but still like a cucumber skin, and inside the cucumber became goo. It was smelling quite strong, a fruity, earthy smell. After a bit more time, it started going dark grey, and fruit flies flew around it. Then about 6 months after the cucumber was put in the lost property office, a man came in and said, "Have you got a cucumber?" The lost property office assistant said, "I'll have a look in the book." And he got the book out and it said, "Cucumber. Can I ask you where you think you lost the cucumber?" he said. And the man said, "No, I'm sorry. I got off the train and went home. When I got home, I looked in my bag and the cucumber was gone. Can you tell me which station you got on at and which station you got off at?" "Well, my problem is that I got on and off quite a few stations that day," said the man, "and I can't remember them all. You see, I deliver stuff for people." "Do you deliver cucumbers?" said the assistant. "No," said the man, "the cucumber was for me to eat." "Well, can you describe the cucumber?" said the assistant. "It was green," said the man. "If I said to you," said the assistant, "that this cucumber was found at a ticket barrier, do you think you could tell me which ticket barrier that might have been? You see, we have to make sure that people don't come in here and claim things that don't belong to them. You might come in here and say that you lost a gold watch. I can't hand you a gold watch just because you say you lost one." "I haven't lost a gold watch," said the man. "I didn't say that you did," said the assistant. "I lost a cucumber," said the man. "So you say," said the assistant. "Can I ask you if anyone has come in here and handed in a cucumber?" said the man. "I can tell you that someone has indeed come in here and handed in a cucumber." "That'll be mine," said the man. "No," said the assistant. "What you don't know is whether many people have come in here and handed in cucumbers, in which case we would have the problem of finding out which of the many cucumbers belongs to you." "Have many people come in here and handed in cucumbers?" said the man. "No," said the assistant. "Well, that one lone cucumber must be mine," said the man. "Not necessarily," said the assistant. "Someone else could have lost a cucumber, and it's their cucumber that was handed in." "Oh, yeah," said the man. "I didn't think of that." "Well," said the assistant, "if you can't think where you might have left the cucumber, I'm afraid I can't give you the cucumber that we've got here in the lost property office." "OK, fair enough," said the man. Thanks very much for your help." Wrong. We went on holiday with Mr. Wrong. Everything he said was wrong. He asked us if night came before day or day before night. We said that day came before night. He said wrong. So we said night came before day, and he said wrong. He asked us which came first, Sunday or Monday. We said Sunday, and he said wrong. So we said Monday, and he said wrong. He asked us if he was telling fibs. We said yes. He said wrong. He asked us if he was telling the truth. We said yes, and he said wrong. Then we asked him, "Why are you asking us all these questions?" He said it was because we liked it, and we said wrong. Eddie and the nappy. Eddie hates having his nappy done, so I say all cheery, "Time for your nappy, Eddie." And he says all sad, "No, nappy." And I say, "Yes, nappy." So I have to run after him going, "Nappy, nappy, 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 nappy." And he's got these little fat rubbery legs that go round like wheels. So away he runs with a wicked grin on his face, screaming, "Woo! You woo!" So I go running after him, shouting, "Nappy, nappy, nappy, I'll get you, until I catch him. Then I lift him up, lay him over my knees to get his nappy off. While I'm doing the pins, he gargles, grr, 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 waving his podgy little legs in the air.
He thinks, great, time to kick Dad's chin and smack, smack, smack on my chin. When I've cleaned him up, it's time for the cream. You have to put cream on a baby's bum or they get nappy rash. But we leave the jar of cream on the windowsill where it gets all cold. So I go, time for the cream, Eddie. And he goes, no, cream. And I say, yeah, cream. And I blob it on. And he says, oh! You imagine what that would feel like. A great blob of cold cream. It would be like having a nice lolly down your pants. So then I put the nappy on and away he goes on his little rubbery legs going, woo! Woo!
The Child Who Was Wild. Once there was a woman, a young woman. She ran from the city, the old city. She ran to the woods, the deep, dark woods. She wasn't seen for days, many days. She came out of the woods, the deep, dark woods. She came with a child who was wild. She brought the child to the city, the old city. He grew and he grew. He grew and he grew. His hands grew shoots, green shoots and leaves. His shoulders grew flowers, the lily and the rose. His hair was the blossom that blows in the wind. He stood in the city, the old city, with the leaves, the flowers and the blossom falling, falling, falling on grey gravel.
Nasty. A plague of wasps in winter. Warning. This is a horror story.
You remember the woman who told me the story of the Bakerloo flea? Well, I didn't see her again for ages until one day I was in the park round my way in Hackney and suddenly there she was. You don't live round here, do you? I said to her. No, she says, but my son does. Now he's married and I like to come across to see him once in a while when I can afford it. I bet you don't remember what you told me the last time we met, I said. What was that, she says? That story. You know, that story about a giant flea that lived down the underground. No one believes it, I said. Well, as I was just hanging about and it was a nice day, I then said to her, still, I don't suppose any other amazing things have happened to you, have they? Now, that's funny you should say that, she said, because I was thinking, you know, this summer has been a real devil for wasps, hasn't it? Yeah, I said, well, you know, it put me in mind of one time, some years back now, when it wasn't the summer we were bothered by them, it was the winter. Go on, I said. Now, my son wasn't long married and his wife Eileen was expecting, so I used to come across and see them more often in those days and stay over the weekend. They were living in the old GLC flats down by the Hackney Marshes, just next to the River Lee. I know, I said. Yeah, that's the Kingsmead. They're the ones, she said. Well, it was a devil of a winter, that one, she said, and all the harder because it had come after a really nice summer. Now, and I know you're not going to believe your ears when I tell you this, even though it was such a devil of a winter, a very funny thing happened. They had a plague of wasps down there. No other word for it. A plague of wasps in winter. It was one of the most frightening, terrible things that I've ever seen, and it all happened just when Eileen was having the baby. Don't tell me, I said. Go on. Well, I'll spare you the worst, she said, but terrible things went on that winter. You can't imagine it. There would be, say, sitting indoors having our tea. Outside, it'd be freezing cold, raining maybe, and like all of a sudden, you'd hear this buzzing, and you could never be sure whether it come from the windows or under the table or where. And then maybe you'd look up, yeah? And there, from out the light fitting, they'd come. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 wasps, one after another, crawling out. And then they'd drop onto the table or begin to buzz round and round the room. And they always acted like they were drunk or drugged or something. They didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know what they were doing. I remember once they just fell straight onto our tea things. They bobbed about in the tea and crawled all over the sandwiches, and two landed in my son's hair. Now, my son has thick hair, like really thick and wiry hair, and the moment those wasps landed, it was as if they knew they had a job of work to do. They set to work digging their way through his hair to get to his scalp. But that wasn't all. One landed on his collar as well. I saw it there, and I can see it to this day, and the next moment it was creeping over the edge and down his neck. Yeah, there's two of them in your hair, Eileen's shouting. Never mind them, he shouts. There's one coming down my neck. And he's struggling to get his jumper and shirt loose. It's got me! It's got me! It's got me! He was screaming now and dancing around like a mad monkey, tearing at his clothes. But he was afraid to pull them off, right? Afraid to pull them off himself, because that would just squeeze the wasp harder against his skin. Let me get at those two in your hair, Eileen yelled at him. One's got me right on the chest as well, he's saying. They're stinging me all over, he was yelling. Get 'em out, get 'em out. I can't do it, I can't do it. Get my shirt off me back. Of course, by now he was scared to get the jumper over his head, because that would just squash his hair down onto his head. Oh, it was terrifying to watch him. He was like a mad bull, and he was swearing something terrible. Tear it off me, you two, will you, he says. Don't stand there. They've got through to me head now. So Eileen grabbed the bread knife off the table. Stand still. For God's sake, stand still, love, she screams at him. So with two wasps stinging at his scalp and another one down his neck, he froze. He stood stock still, and she hacked at the jumper with the bread knife. I grabbed a chair, jumped up on it, and tried to find the two of them that got tangled up in that hair of his. Talk about a needle in a haystack. Not that I was scared, mind, but my boy. I tell you, he's allergic to wasp stings. They swell up something awful, huge red lumps. And last time it happened, the doctor said it would be all right, so long as he didn't get stung too many times at once. But he didn't know how many times might be too many for my boy. It could be 10, or it could be hundreds. We just didn't know. My boy just stood there, rooted to the spot, Eileen hacking at his jumper, and me going through his hair like a dog, looking for fleas. They're still stinging me, he says, through his teeth. Eileen tore that jumper apart and ripped his shirt and vest off, and the wasp just flopped off him onto the floor with my bare fingers. And I can tell you, I never dared do it before in my life. I pulled first the one, then the other wasp out of his hair. And as I pulled them out of his hair, I squeezed their heads. That's how I killed them. I squeezed their heads. Next day, my boy's back looked like a sack of potatoes. And oh, he was sick. I can tell you, he was sick. But I tell you, what I saw was nothing to what others saw, or what got into the paper, or what people told you about round the flats or up the new laundrette. In the mornings, out shopping, you'd find yourself talking to people you didn't even know. Oh, did you get any last night? Someone would say, oh yeah, only half a dozen in my bath, come crawling up the overflow pipe while I was having my bath, huh? Yeah? There was people finding them underneath their pillars, in the saucepans, or blowing them out their hairdryers. And when you met people in the street, the first thing they did was stand there, showing you swollen fingers, swellings on their necks, on their lips, or even on their eyelids. Oh, it was a terrible time for us all, I can tell you. Well, I was amazed by all this, and I told her so, but why didn't I ever hear about any of this? I said. Oh, she said, no one ever hears about what goes on down my boy's way. They used to call it the land that God forgot. I mean, you didn't hear about the Blackwall Tunnel disaster either, did you? Which one? I asked. Every morning I have my local radio station on, and there's always someone saying, all traffic stuck in the Blackwall Tunnel because a lorry shed its load. Well, this one concerns them wasps, she said. And the Blackwall Tunnel, I said. Yes, of course. Oh, you see, I remember sitting one Sunday evening with my friend Charmaine's little girl, Donna. And Donna says, I know all about where those wasps come from, you know. Of course you do, my love, of course you do, I said. But I'm not saying, she says, because no one believes me. No, I say, no, you never mind, I never you mind. You just run along and play with your brother and let Auntie sit down for a bit. Well, she goes off, and I didn't think any more about it. Until the Blackwall Tunnel disaster happened. Yeah, I've been waiting for that, I said. Well, she says, do you know Tate and Lyle, the sugar people? They make sugar and golden syrup and the like. Well, they've got their works down by the river, and every day the men take out big, whacking great big tanker lorries full of golden syrup. What? Like petrol tankers full of golden syrup? Oh, lovely, I said. Yeah, that's what the wasps thought, she said. No one's quite sure what happened, but two of their fellas drove their tankers out the gates, and as they turned into the Blackwall Tunnel, there was some kind of collision. One of the fellas said afterwards that there was wasps in his cap driving him spare, and the other fella said that it wasn't the first bloke's fault. He said it was my fault. He'd felt the back wheels sliding out across the road like a skid on ice. But whatever happened, one tanker hit the other tanker in the back and cracked open its tank. The two lorries jammed up the Blackwall Tunnel. I can guess what happened, I said. I bet you can, she said. And you'd be right. Syrup poured all over the road, and worse still, it got into the cab and all over the fella in the tanker behind, right? And after that, it was almost as if the wasps could tell each other the news, as if they could like telephone each other up, because inside half an hour the place was crawling with hundreds and thousands of wasps. They'd come for the syrup. We watched it on telly. We could see the arch and the dark entrance to the tunnel, and every inch of those two tankers was crawling with wasps. There were thousands more buzzing around in the air. Then the man on the telly says very quiet, the driver of the second tanker is still in the cab. And what happened to the driver, I asked. I don't want to say, she said. How do you mean? There are some things that it's better not talked about, she said. Did he live, I said. Yes and no, she said. What was left of him lived. Oh, but that's horrible, I said. Yeah, and it took them a whole day to clear the mess up, she said. The fire brigade came with their fire engines and gas masks. They covered the place with some kind of foam, poison foam that killed off the wasps in their thousands. And they had reports all the time on the telly and the local radio. Expert this and expert that kept coming on. People who'd been in Malaya, people who'd been in Burma during the war, they all came on giving their pennyworth, because now it was all different, wasn't it? How do you mean, I said. Well, as long as it's just the likes of us on the estates getting stung to hell and back, it was just another problem. Like the drains is just another problem, or the gutters, or the rubbish piling up. But now, well, oh, I get you, I said. Pictures of the lorry driver on the telly and all that. No. Not a bit of it. It was Tate and Lyle. Yeah, they got scared. The wasps now knew where they were. Who were, I asked. Tate and Lyle. The wasps would come and get 'em. Gobble up all the sugar. It didn't matter them stinging us. What mattered was that hundreds and thousands of wasps had got a whiff of all that sugar sitting there. All right? I remember Charmaine saying Tate and Lyle had been bringing sugar into London from the West Indies since olden days. Never mind that, I said. What happened? Well, next thing was they made a minister of wasps or something. And Tate and Lyle put up a reward. Thousands of pounds it was for anyone who could help find out where these wasps was coming from. You see, everyone knew how to kill wasps, whether it was with me with my bare hands, or the fire brigade with their poisons and their foams. But what no one knew was where the little devils were coming from. 2 or 3 times they had a big thing on the telly with everyone having their say, and that man with the glasses, I forget his name, he sat in the middle like a king, and we all watched them. Donna used to come in while Charmaine did her late shift at work, and once the man from Tate and Lyle was on with his puppet thing, Mr. Cube it was, their mascot, and a person came on the programme and said, "I think the wasps are coming from Wapping, coming from the docks and wharves down there where the spices and raisins are stored." And we all shouted, "No, never, rubbish, take him off." And then someone came on and said, "Somewhere there must be a giant wasp, a giant queen wasp, maybe hundreds of giant queen wasps, lasting out the winter, way out of sight, keeping themselves all snug and warm somewhere." And we were there saying, "Could be, yeah, no, he could be right there, couldn't he?" After that, some people came and talked about some wasp traps and wasp poisons, but in the end, they all said that they had to find the queen. So the hunt was on, and we were getting desperate, I can tell you. Grown men were that afraid, some of them couldn't face getting themselves out the house in the morning. Some people couldn't face going down to the shops and sat indoors behind nets and netting draped all over the place. So on the telly, on the next big programme, people came on trying to get that Tate and Lyle reward for catching the giant queen. They came on with all kinds of things they'd found, like yellow beetles, dead bumblebees, and the experts kept saying, no, that's not her. And Mr. Cube, he kept saying, no, that's not her. It caught on everywhere, everyone was saying it. Once, we got the Sunday roast out the oven, put it on the table, and one of the kids took a look at it and goes, no, that's not her. Yeah, well, we did have our laughs, I suppose. But anyway, you'll never guess who found the queen that everyone was after. No, I said, I can't. Donna, she says. I don't believe it, I said. Like I said, the hunt was on. There were more and more of the wasps about. There was Tate and Lyle on the verge of being gobbled out of their works and losing a fortune or two. The hospitals were full of people who'd been nearly stung to death. Hundreds of people were creeping round their houses thinking that just because 20 wasps had crawled out their wardrobe, the queen was in there. Yeah, they probably burnt out more old building sheds and fences that winter than what they tried to do to us in the Blitz. Yeah, I said, yeah. And Donna? Well, it was the third of these big telly programmes. Donna was in, Charmaine was out, Eileen, my boy, and the baby were out. It was a cold Sunday evening in January. So me and Donna, we snuggled in together on the settee and watched. This time they had the cameras out and about, looking at different places where this queen wasp might be. A man came on and swore blind that there was a nest of queens in a warehouse place where they were storing perm mixture, the stuff hairdressers use to set your hair. They're not there, Auntie, Donna says. The queens aren't there. And she was right. They went all over this perm factory, in and out the tanks, up and down the ladders. And in the end, Mr. Cube came on the telly and he said, No, the queens aren't there. I think the telly people were beginning to think it was all a bit of a joke. Or put it this way, so long as the hunt for the queen wasp was on, they were happy. They had something to make telly programmes about, didn't they? I think they loved it. But it wasn't like that for us. It's not funny, is it? Donna said. No, I said, it isn't. Auntie, I know where the queens are, she told me again. All right, where? I said, listening this time. In the dump, she says. What dump? I say. The dump where we're not allowed to play, only our Neville does. And so do some of the other big boys. Don't tell tales, Donna, I says. The queens are in there, Auntie, she says. Yeah, I know they're in there, Donna, love, I said, just to keep her quiet. The dump that Donna was talking about was no ordinary dump. It was a huge site on the marshes where they'd drained the land. They dumped heaps and heaps and heaps of rubbish there all day long, and often long into the night, under floodlights. And they had these huge rollers out, pressing it all down. The noise was terrible. It was all fenced off with big signs up. Danger, keep out. And there were searchlights and Alsatian dogs patrolling all round it. Then Donna said something that really made me sit up. Neville's gone out there tonight to look for the queens. Oh my God, I thought. I wonder if Charmaine knows. Doesn't she have enough on her plate working day and night trying to keep her family and food and clothes without Neville getting stung, bitten or ending up in court? Well, I said to Donna, he mustn't. It's too dangerous. No, Donna says, it's not too dangerous. Not from the wasps it ain't. There was a lot more there in the summer. What do you mean? I said. Because of the rubbish, she said. The wasps are all in the rubbish. If you go down Ridley Road, you see big piles of boxes and stuff, mouldy stuff. And the wasps go for that. They go for that rubbish. Then the dustmen come along and it all goes off to the dump. It does, Auntie, honest, it does. Well, the Bakerloo flea woman said, suddenly it all clicked with me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry or scream or what. This little girl, Donna, had been sitting there all those weeks figuring it all out on her own. All summer, the wasps were settling on the empty fruit boxes down Ridley. The dustmen were lugging them off down to the dump, and hundreds and thousands of wasps were being rolled into the ground by them big rollers that squashed the rubbish. As like as not, all that rolling kept it warm as well. What a joke. They, the council, had built a massive, great big nest for the wasps. And here was little Donna telling me her brother Neville and his gang of mates was out there, right then and there, in the cold and the dark, looking for the queens. Not that that bit was a joke, I must say. What if they did find the queens? They'd kill themselves trying to find them. What if they'd become like giants, living in the middle of that great warm heap of millions of layers of cardboard, all covered in mouldy fruit and stuff? I didn't know who to turn to. I didn't want to call the police. They'd have picked up the kids for trespassing. I didn't want to tell Charmaine, not that I could mind at that moment, because she was on down the evening shift down the toy factory. Switch that rubbish off, Donna, I said. You seem to know more about it than all of them put together. They were busy showing pictures of someone in a gas mask in the basement of the Sweetie factory in Stoke Newington. We're going out, I told her. OK, the hunt is on. So we went out, late and cold as it was, me and Donna. First thing we did was ring the fire brigade. I don't remember what I said. I just remember screaming down the phone at those lads at the fire station. There are some kids trapped out on the rubbish dump. I mean, if they aren't trapped now, then they very well, very, very soon will be. Then I grabbed Donna and we made off for the dump. My heart was thumping away like nobody's business. When we got down there, the rollers had stopped because the men had gone home. There was a light on in the night watchman's hut, but no sign of the boys. I gave a shout through the fence. Neville! I shouted. Nev! A voice came back. Miles off. God knows where from. Yeah? What do you want? Come out of there. You'll get yourself killed, I said. At that, the night watchman came out with his dogs. It was the bloke all the kids called Dirty Dave. He was a strange fella. Everyone knew him, but no one knew where he came from. Besides, he hated kids like Neville, and they hated him. If I catch 'em, I'll kill 'em, he says. And he meant it, most like. Just then, the fire brigade turns up, and there's little Donna crying her eyes out, holding on to my coat. And a young fella jumps out of his fire engine. He comes up to me. Was it you, ma'am, that called the fire service? Yeah, I say, yeah, it was. Well, where are these boys trapped, he says. Over there, I said, and I waved out across, way across those great big heaps of rubbish. They've got stuck, I think, looking for the queens. He looked at me as if I was balmy. Looking for the queen, he says. The queens! The queen wasps, I say. What, here, he says. Well, of course they're here, I said. They're in the fruit boxes off of Ridley. He looked at me for a moment while it sunk in. And suddenly, it seemed to make sense to him too. Blimey, he said. Just like that, very quiet. Blimey. And he moved like greased lightning. It seemed like in a flash. There was 5, 6 of them, all in the gear, masks, spray guns, the lot. How did we get in here? One of them was saying. I don't know. I don't know. And anyway, Dirty Dave had disappeared behind a heap of rubbish to kill Neville. But Donna knew. She shot out from behind my coat, and there she was, 20 yards away, along the fence to where they'd used old doors when they'd run, where they'd run out of fencing wire. And believe it or not, she just opened one of the doors. Yeah, she opened a door. They'd left one of the doors on its hinges and the kids had made it their getting in place. The fireman dashed off through the door. "Nev!" I screamed. "The firemen are coming in for you." The Bakerloo flea woman took in a breath. "Yeah," I said, "so what happened to Neville?" "Well, the fireman found him with his mates over by the River Lee, hacking away at some orange boxes. They hauled out the kids and brought them back to me and Donna." "Did you find them? Did you find the Queens, Neville?" Donna shouted at him. Neville didn't answer. He wasn't saying. Neville and his mates weren't saying. No amount of me or the fireman or Donna going on at them made them let on. The Bakerloo flea woman stopped as if that was the end of the story. "Well, what happened then?" I said. "Well," she said, Dirty Davy nailed up the door, and next day, you're not going to believe this, the very next day, that clown, the Minister of Wasps, was down there, and for weeks and weeks after that, they were out there behind that fence, behind the doors, drilling holes, spreading poisons and powders and emptying gallons of stuff all over the dump. "But look," I said, "did they find the giant queen wasps? Did they?" "Did they? Did they?" she says to me and laughs. "Look, did they find the giant queen wasps?" I said, "Oh, tell me." And then she laughed and she laughed. She laughed and laughed. "I tell you," she said, "they never found the giant queen wasps, and Donna never got a reward off of Tate and Lyle for saving their sugar for them." "So look, did they get rid of the winter wasps then?" I said. "Well," she says, "you seen any wasps about this winter?" "No," I said. "No, I can't say I have." "Well," she said, "they must have got rid of them then, eh? Mustn't they?" Yeah, I said a bit doubtfully. Yeah, they must have." "Funny old business, wasn't it?" she said. Yeah, I said, "yeah, very funny. Yeah." But I didn't laugh. Now, it would be great if you subscribed. That is, you become a subscriber. Look out for the subscribe button. What happens, you see, is that I make new vids every few months, and then I post them up one a week. So if you subscribe, you get to see the new ones just as they come hot off the press.